I caught a short
All right. Well,
segment of it.
welcome everybody to Mudflood was Armageddon. Mudflood was Armageddon. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they're willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. Thank you, Randy, for joining me. I was last night calling out saying, Randy, I think I found something new. Is this a nothing burger or is this a big deal? King Hiram, King Hiram and of
Well,
Tyre.
it was, it was significant at that time. What he was able to provide as far as a service. And he was quite well at doing what he was able to do. Yeah, as far as negotiating whatever it being bartered for, maybe for the service and expectations. There's always a little gray area in the contracting that isn't fully understood between the two parties. Is that what you're referring to,
Kinda,
so to speak?
kinda. So let's just look at some of the first kings here, and we'll get an idea. The Lord appeared Solomon's other acts. Now here we go. At the end of 20 years, hopefully I'm sharing the screen.
Yep, yeah, you're sharing. Yep.
In which at the end of 20 years, which Solomon had built the two houses, the house of the Lord, the king's house, and Hiram, king of Tyre, had supplied Solomon with cedar, cypress timber, gold, as much as he desired. King Solomon gave to Hiram 20 cities, and the pasture lands thereof, and in the land of Galilee. But when Hiram came from Tyre to see the cities that Solomon had given him, they did not please him. Therefore, he said, What kind of cities are these that you have given me, my brother? So they are called the land of Kabul to this day. Hiram had sent to the king 120 talents of gold. That's really all they, you know, have in that paragraph. This is the account of the forced labor King Solomon drafted to build the house of the Lord and all of these other houses, the wall of Jerusalem. Megiddo's right there. We got Canaan. So my stretch, is it a stretch that is this a type? Because when we go back to chapter 6, and you know, we do find out the details. It was 480 years after the people of Israel came out of the land of Egypt in the fourth year of Solomon's reign over Israel, a month of Ziv, which is the second month, they began to build the Lord, the house of Solomon. The King Solomon built for the Lord with 60 cubits, 20, 30, sacred geometry all the way around, build a structure inside the wall. Uh, the house was built with the stone prepared at the quarry. So it's that avoidance so that they couldn't hear a hammer or an axe as they were putting their Lego kit temple together that lasts forever, it seems like. Something's going on here, Randy, and I'm trying to tie it into, how the mighty have fallen. We have the Ezekiel 28, which is, these are laments over the king of Tyre, prophecy against the prince of Tyre, because in your heart you said, I am a god. You're indeed wiser than Daniel. No secret is hidden from you. Now, your great wisdom and your trade, you have increased your wealth, and your heart became proud. This is a type, I think, but it's not as clear cut as, when Jesus says, you know, this is Mount Harmon and this this is Israel and this is Judah. Those are recognized as types because he says this is a type. But this is something weird. This is something, man. How was the king of Tyre going to be analogized to? You were the signet of perfection, full of wisdom, perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. And we're talking about the same king of Tyre. Something was going weird, man.
Well, when it comes to prefabrication and the ability of uh, that sort of quality, you can't have you can't lack anything when it comes to the detailing, in particular, to end up with once the project is completed, erected, not only prefabricated, the logistics, the transportation, and then
Right.
doing it in a chronological order. So where you're starting at the foundations, generally, you begin at the bottom and work your way up. And and it doesn't just fall together, but it is assembled, and peacefully, because they're not doing any field adjustments the way it sounds. you
Yeah.
know to have that ability is quite impressive, and
Yeah.
then and to do it in a timely manner. I mean, 20 years, I mean, a score of years to the average individual's lifespan. That represents probably a prime portion
Yeah.
of anybody's, whether you're from 20 to 40, say,
That's a good percentage. Yeah. That's a
that's
good percentage of your life.
a nice chunk. And as far as him, not being pleased with the cities, uh, I I believe it has more to do, because if there is cities, he's able, I'm guessing, to generate revenue, taxing, the
Yeah.
citizenry of and then probably what he isn't pleased with is their ability to not just survive, but thrive, between the trading of, and again, it probably isn't just doing all your shop local within the star fort. Some stuff is, you know, between other areas. So I think he's probably less pleased with what that economy represented.
It had to be
Maybe,
something like that. That
maybe, yeah.
or he expected here's your
That
city.
he wanted buildings that were there, that were the quality of what he was building elsewhere. If that's what he thought, everybody could do it. And they claim, like in the 1800s here in the United States, where they're throwing them the buildings up, nilly-willy everywhere, and they were just so superb, and they could tear them down in a matter of, couple score 40 years later. This stuff's junk.
That's a common pattern. Now let's think about who deserves more glory, the architect or the builder. Because Hiram, let's I mean, he overlaid the altar of cedar inside the house. He overlaid everything with pure gold. He drew chains of gold across the inner sanctuary. Even the wood, the cedar, he carved into the form of gourds and open
Oh,
flowers.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't
You
don't
know,
be don't be misled here. This isn't like creation, and it's all entirely a one man show. Yeah, there's some teamwork effort here in every aspect of such a project.
right?
You
And
know, it,
in our minds, we have to let it wash over us that when you have
yeah,
wings touch in the middle of the house and overlay it with
yeah,
gold and
it
everything,
isn't
and
a
it's
concept where if you can't see the finished product before you even begin, it isn't like, well, I'm going to start building here and I wonder what it's going to look like when I'm done.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that Solomon and everybody else could have had pictures. It's going to look exactly like this.
probably more
Right.
than likely, you know. Do I need to measure this or can I just, bring
No, you
some
don't.
here and
It's
make
going to
it
be
fit?
perfect, you know?
Yeah. Just bring something over here and make it fit.
So
I
he was
think,
unhappy with you know, did he have a right to be unhappy with those cities? I know that Judah, the tribe of Judah, when they got their extra land, they went, it's the top of the mountain and there's all covered with forest. And Moses said, well, what are you guys, lazy? Get clearing that forest. Get clearing
move
that
that
forest, man.
mountain.
Yeah, this is your home now. Get busy clearing that mountain. You know. You were in Eden. Every precious stone was your covering. That king of Tyre was precious covering, sardis, topaz, diamond, beryl, onyx, jasper. Crafted in gold were your settings and your engravings. On the day you were created, they were prepared. You were an anointed guardian chariot. Wow. I think we've left King Tyre, and I really believe that we're into some other, you know, insanity. What's going on here? I didn't want to duplicate this. Let's go to Isaiah 14. And let's just see, are we still talking about King of Tyre? Let's see. Am I in the right place here? How you have fallen from heaven, O day star, son of dawn, how you are cut down to the ground, you who laid the nations low. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven above the stars of God, set my throne on high, set my, on the mount of the assembly in the far reaches of the north. What's he going to do? Tell Jesus, the creative Elohim, yeah, thanks for the good head start, but I got it from here. This is all working out good. I'm going to ascend above the clouds of heaven. And what would possess somebody to be like, things are working out so good, I'm as good as the person that created me? I don't get it.
Well, yeah, that's the difference. Yeah.
All the kings of the nations lie in glory, each in his own tomb, but you are cast out away from your grave like a loathed branch, clothed with the slain. Those pierced by the sword will go down to the stones of the pit like a dead body trampled underfoot. You will not be joined with them in burial because you have destroyed your land. You have slain your people. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not seeing, it's not as clear cut as I would like it, like this is Tyre, or something like that. But something happened. Wow. In
Well,
Philistia,
yeah. When it comes to the works of Satan, uh, who's ever involved in it, share all those characteristics.
your heart was proud because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. Somehow we get a little too full of ourselves as humans, a little too easily. Brought fire from your midst, consumed you, turned you to ashes on the earth in the sight of all who saw you. All who know you among the people are appalled at you. You have come to a dreadful end and shall be no more forever. Wow. Now, these Sidon, the Sidonians, supposedly, that's where it took 3 years to go there and get their trees and bring it back. But when they did, nobody could carve like the Sidonians. And we see in wasn't that part of the big deal?
And just like, following recipes, even in the kitchen, some things you don't necessarily race through because it's, with milling lumber, you need it to be see unless the tree was dead when it was cut down, where it was beginning to season while it was standing. But that is generally not the normal. You
Oh, yeah.
generally fell a live growing tree, and then the seasoning, the milling,
Right. Yeah. You got to let
all
the
all
moisture have to
required.
go.
It isn't like, oh, crimey, that this tree that I'm going to cut down is going to take me 3 years to haul it from where I'm cutting it to where I'm,
Right. And the Bible
no,
describes it on giant rafts. The the logs floated and they just
yeah, and
pulled
that
them.
they use, yeah, that's how they did it around here also. But there's still, from the time you fell the tree, move it to where you're actually gonna, uh, mill it, uh, whether it's planks, beams, boards, whatever you're taking from it. There's a way of doing it correctly, and it's generally not immediately. It
No,
it's a
they
time.
usually involve like putting them in big heating sheds and they heat up the wood for a couple of months to dry it out or something. From what I understand, I want to read verse 6. Now, therefore, command that the cedars of Lebanon be cut for me, and my servants will join your servants, and I will pay you for your servants as much as you want, as much wages as you set. For you know that there is no one among us who knows how to cut timber like the Sidonians. That's that's a fact, I guess. Soon as Hiram heard the words of Solomon, he rejoiced greatly. Blessed be the Lord this day, who has given to David a wise son to be over this great people, because they were now up there. They were the Babylonians, the Medes, and the Persians. People were paying tribute to David. He stockpiled enough money to just say, Solomon, pay this guy and build this temple. And God did bless that temple. He entered into it and showed that this was the place where his name would be glorified. And there was no doubt, it was going to he paid him. He got the cities, the pasture lands thereof. He could have been, and this was advertisement for the other people of the other gods. I don't think Hiram set himself apart and said, I will only build for Solomon and Yahweh. I just don't. And then we're talking about like 150,000, burden bearers, stone cutters.
But he did commit, to some projects that would take some time. Yeah, and as far as uh, the trades, it's not just all laborers, whether they're the carpenters or the masons, or artisans of whatever, the specialty stuff were done by those, that were qualified specialists in those trades. I mean, you had some that uh, were unique, where they were pretty much qualified for whatever the task at hand. But yeah, as far as those that were doing the major work were, yeah, they were grouped into those that were qualified, not just anyone who was available. They were qualified.
And they
Uh,
weren't afraid to just put out forced labor either. I mean, it was
well, and
all
it
part
was
of the same
rotated,
thing.
and they were rotated in and
Right.
out. It wasn't like you stayed at the same job until it was totally finished. You were rotated in and out of the project as part of the workforce pool.
And they lived their lives. And in the meantime, they went to festivals, they made sacrifices. Solomon was building
Life
his
went
own
on. Yeah.
house 13 years, finished the entire house. covered the cedar above the chambers, 45 pillars, 15 in each row. We still see these everywhere. Hall of pillars, sacred geometry, hall of throne, finished with cedar from floor to rafters. And this was Hiram's business, the temple furnishings. We see these worldwide. These happened. They're still here. It looks like people need to read the Bible the way it was written. When we see, what the heck is going on? When we see, brims of cups, flowers of lilies, that's the Bible talk. The whole idea is we have to get past the idea that Jesus Christ was not, a near caveman, that it comes down to the absolute thing of the difference between the Apostle Peter taking a giant scimitar sword and supposedly taking aim at Malthus and chopping his ear off with a great big downward slap that just stopped right and cut his ear off, instead of your classical, think of Romeo and Juliet, the beginning of the book, Capulets and the Montagues, and they're having a sword fight and it gets out of control and he kills the guy. But they're using those rapiers. And if somebody couldn't, like Peter, draw out his sword and flick off somebody's ear and go, "You really want to mess with Jesus?" And Jesus saying, "Whoa, this is not the time and place. Here's your ear back, Malchus." His cousin will recognize Peter later. How are we going to read the Bible as a bunch of cavemen that, "Oh, Peter was a fisherman, cut off ear, get proud and put his foot in mouth," That's not Peter. That's not the Bible. Peter was a guy that was, a business owner running around, flicked off somebody's ear with the tip of a sword and said, "You're not taking this Jesus. He washed my feet."
Yeah, as far as the building of Solomon's temple, even if you go back to the wilderness, when they were receiving the offerings for doing the tabernacle project, and some of the detail.
Oh, there goes Randy. What in the world? He'll pop back on. We got the people in the wilderness. They had the temple. They were building it. Welcome, Arturo. I understand you're going to be coming back, man. I should check. Is something going on with CERN? No, this channel's not always live, but it's mostly live. I do some standalone videos, but it normally.
Me now?
Yeah, now you're back. You kind of dropped off there for a second.
I know, and it took me a while to find my way home. Yeah.
So
But anyhow,
Arturo's back, and he wants me to study the CERN. There might be something up on that, because my take on CERN is that the reason they're colliding these things, and I believe that works, is that what do we know? We know somebody stabbed Jesus. His blood, his water hit the ground. What is CERN trying to do? It's trying to find Jesus's blood and water, a trace element of it, because if they can synthesize it, they won't have to extract adrenochrome from living people and leave a trail of dead bodies around, and they can synthesize it and live forever. That's what CERN's doing. That's why they have the billy goats jumping around going like, "Yay, CERN's open. We're going to cast spells and do everything else."
Yeah.
We got
Duplicating body fluids. I mean, yeah, they do that with uh, other, body fluids, but to replicate the body, the body fluids of Christ, that
right.
may be more of a challenge than the average
Well,
uh,
they
body.
definitely though have a high opinion of themselves, and that somehow they think they deserve this. Because of all that walking among the fiery stones and being the anointed cherub, and aren't things running really well? Look at me. He wants to exalt himself like the Most High. Uh, I don't care how good he is. He's not the Most
Well,
High.
yeah, he may be impressive to some or even most, but yeah, there are limitations what the Lord allows. Yeah.
We have a lot of questions. I don't know. Prince of Foxes. I was looking at this weird stuff, man. This is a movie.
Was planted in the winter must soon begin to grow.
That's some pretty weird stuff, Randy, for a movie. This is called The Prince of Foxes. I don't know why I clicked on it last night. I was doing some, after the show and wondering about it.
So this was something that was released prior to WW2, or
Yep.
what?
Yeah.
And who did the production, or who got the
Uh,
credit for MGM or? Uh,
Tyrone Power, Orson Welles, directed by a Henry King. It's in the heart of Renaissance Italy in the 1500s. A cunning, ambitious man finds himself entangled in a web of power, loyalty, and treachery. Tasked with a message, tasked with a message mission that blurs the lines between alliance and personal gain, he navigates the complex world of political intrigue, risking everything for his aspirations, betrayal and alliance. But that
he's
I
getting
think
reckless. So it's written by Orson Welles, or
somehow, and their idea of what was going on in the world was this, what in the world?
yeah, there's some interesting special effects as far as that parading around and some of the
But
costumes. That
yeah, and they wanted the world to think that's how it was. This is, nobody makes a movie like this by accident, to show this and the people's, this is
and
how their
it's and
day-to-day
it's
life was.
and this is a musical, right? Or partial
No,
musical?
no,
Well, it's
not a
not a
music.
musical. I mean,
No.
what's going on here kind of represents
How
something in it.
white people lived back in the day. Because as much as I'm trying to keep this not a racial thing, it's a racial thing.
Well,
This
they
is
made it. Yeah, you're right. They made it a racial thing. So how can it not be?
right.
I mean,
The
it
whole
shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. I
it
agree,
shouldn't
but
be.
it absolutely is.
I
Most
have
certainly.
here exposed in my notes. I don't know if you can
Yeah.
see it.
Well, no, I don't need to read it. I
I
trust on.
have two lines marked out, and in the left-hand margin it says, "Per RJ, the famous Randy from Wisconsin." What was exposed was not the Trinity, but the inclusion of the Gentiles. What is the whole purpose of the New Testament and the New Covenant? Wow, Jesus is bringing it to the Jews that, guess what? The gospel was preached to the Abraham that through his descendants, all nations will be blessed. That's the great new covenant.
Well,
They've
yeah,
changed the new covenant into, now we know there's three gods.
yeah. Why? Otherwise, what's the purpose of taking such news worldwide if it wasn't to include everyone that heard it?
Right. And that there is this whole new message of, we're spiritual Israel. We've been totally grafted in, and by his stripes we're healed also. That's the message of the New Testament. Jesuits have turned it into, there's three gods. There is the Father, Holy Spirit. There is his incarnation, Jesus. And then there is another redundant Holy Spirit from all eternity that is of the same substance as the Father's Spirit. It doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. There's one God. And the thing with our blood and body and what is the quantum, there is no quantum.
The webs we weave. Yes.
The quantum is the made up. The quantum is you can't see it, but 97% of the matter in this world is unseen. And if you add that into the math, we can round the numbers, make the world into a globe, convince people it's not the center of everything that Jesus was doing, and just put out posters that go, you are here in the Milky Way, and it's just not important. So that's a no gooda. That's not what we're here for.
Mm-hmm.
We have, I am against you, O Sidon. What? Because they're too good at cutting wood? I'm going to execute judgments against her and manifest my holiness in her, pestilence in your streets, because you cut that wood so good. No, I think somehow the process and the builder was given the credit instead of the architect, or something's going on,
Well, or you can go, you do such a quality job that I can gouge any customer I want because, of, the quality work that, I'm able to provide. Possibly. There's different. I'm not saying that's all down, but
the mystery of iniquity attracted
Uncommon
you.
Woman, Eternal Light. Hello, Helen. Tom Budis.
it might have happened before this part
Brothers
though,
and sisters joining
because
us.
it was right away when it
Sorry, I'm a little like
at the,
a little winded. I
at
just
the
ran
beginning of the.
like 2 or 3 times, so I'm a little.
It's right within the first couple minutes.
Not to be quickly shaken in mind or alarmed, either by a spirit.
Oh, go before this. Before this.
The effect that.
Before this, right there. Yep. Well, I don't.
Yeah, this is
long.
A few seconds before it starts.
Yeah.
The Lord is come. Let no one deceive you in any way, for that day will not come unless the rebellion comes first, and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction, who opposes and exalts himself against every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, proclaiming himself to be God. Do you not remember that when I was still with you, I told you these things? And you know what is restraining him now, so that he may be revealed in his time. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains it will do so until he is out of the way. And then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord Jesus will kill with the breath of his mouth, and bring to nothing by the appearance of his coming. The coming of the lawless one is by the activity of Satan with all power and false signs and wonders, and with all wicked deception for those who are perishing, because they refused to love the truth and so be saved. Therefore God sends them a strong delusion.
Yeah, that's the first 12 verses of chapter 2 of Second Thessalonians. And we've read that here a number of times, and even within the past week.
Absolutely. And we're going to read it again, but before we do, we'll check in with 2 Timothy. And look at chapter 1, verse 15. Now, when you have 7 letters written to Asia, and then all of Asia turns away from Jesus, that's pretty much a great falling away. And in Galatians, it said if they start preaching, even if Paul came back and said, and I got a few tweaks on my gospel, they're to be disregarded. No, the gospel was presented to them perfectly, and they're never supposed to change it. All of Asia turned from Paul. That is a great falling away. So, I mean...
Well, in particular, already knowing it had gone out to the entire world, earth, world as of what it truly is, not world implying that you're on some sort of wobbly globe rock thing being hurled into a vacuum, but earth, gone out over the earth.
Right. And do your best to come to me soon. Things are falling apart. Demas has been mentioned in the Bible 3 or 4 times as one of the faithful brothers that's still with him. But at the very end, Demas, in love with this present world, has deserted me. And it talks about, how in Asia, they had, they felt like they were going to be dead. They felt like, oh my gosh, this is it. Are we ever going to get out of Asia? But the Lord will rescue me from every evil deed and bring me safely into his kingdom of heaven. That is where his focus was, knowing that that was not going to be a restoration. And this isn't going to be a restoration. You read the Bible, the end from the beginning, it's a rescue to where you're going to be an overcomer or not. And that's what it's coming down to. And I don't want to change this into, I don't want to turn it into racism. I don't want to turn it into, blame the white people, or, something like that. But, it does come down to, if white people are the problem and the United States, had the same laws as the Nazis, don't you think we should stop just going like pointing the finger, going like, boy, those Nazis were so bad. That's the whole problem, and I get it.
It's tedious to say the least.
Spot,
it's right in the center of a modern city and very densely populated at that. So you have to render the red heifer lifeless and then make a huge bonfire to be able to incinerate the whole heifer. And that's going to draw a lot of attention unless there's something much more immediate going on in the area.
Okay. The whole thing now, for the last 2 years, Static in the Attic has been poo-pooing every bit of the added 1,000 years. The idea is that, how can you say that we couldn't build that? I'm a contractor and I could build that. And now all of a sudden, like, look, these impossible buildings, and oh my goodness, they flipped the switch. It's all the Jews' fault. And we've got to realize, you know, America could have done it if we hadn't been hurt by the Jews. And that's Nazism. And the United States was in on it with the Operation Paperclip and everything else to hold out the United States as being, you know, wow, we're the last hope. They flipped the switch. We've got to realize.
Well, you can go a little further back than that. You know, when it came to settling this continent, the major problem was the natives that were already here were part of a problem.
Right.
But they managed that, you know.
But
they moved them west.
And that is the main thing. Everybody that you're the truther, everybody that you're kind of like the Antiquitech Mudflood. Do you think that the Native Americans didn't notice those big buildings? That they didn't say, hey, that looks high and dry, let's move in there. Or that somehow when they arrived at Plymouth Rock, they didn't send Squanto and Pocahontas and a bunch of people to make treaties with the people from Europe. They did. And it was all kind of like, let's figure this out. And then they decided, well, we'll figure it out and then we'll kill you later because we're going to run this. We're going to have an introduction of a new theory of Darwinism.
Yeah, I think the natives at that time were patient with, you know, the new visitors or intruders to first see, you know, really how stupid they actually were. And they were pretty stupid because they put themselves in vulnerable, you know, circumstances because they couldn't survive. They were ill prepared for just the seasons that they were about to encounter, what the weather was going to do.
And
But
I put out a couple of weeks ago, and it kind of slipped my mind until just now, is that I hypothesized that secret societies already existed in Native America, that they had Masonic type beliefs that actually, when they were doing the Iroquois Constitution that they plagiarized for the United States Constitution, it does seem that when I presented it a couple of weeks ago, I found evidence that people like Thomas Jefferson and some of the other Freemasons actually converted to the Masonic orders of that the Native Americans were teaching. And that's how they became deist in their Freemasonic beliefs. And all of that was from that 1666 Julian calendar, 1711 Gregorian calendar era of all of a sudden, we like the Bible. We like the idea that you worship a God, maybe you call him by another name, but yeah, we got it. We know this is going to work. There's a tie in there. And the whole secret societies, the Native Americans, the Pocahontas clause, and the one-drop rule that allowed them to say, we can still, we're still white moving forward, even with the Pocahontas clause. It's all right there. It's all right there that this new Civil War that my father and everybody else, since they were exposing the Gulf of Tonkin false flag from the very beginning, and it took most of their lives before they were finally admitted, yeah, we faked the start of the the Vietnam War, and probably all of it. And here we are. We're trying to convince people the added 1,000 years, they've got this and that. The stones are crying out. There are no atomic weapons. That's quantum math. Is all a joke. And instead, we get itchy-eared truthers that as soon as somebody puts out, well, maybe the clowns were Nephilim, we forget all of the facts that we already know. Well, we're established in this fact that this was a deception. This was the added 1,000 years here and there. And all the questions that we have left unanswered because the veil hasn't been lifted, they're just throwing it out there. And they're going to be asked those questions. Well, what about this? And then Paul is going to be going like, I don't know. I'm just trying to sell a book on clowns were Nephilim. And I have a new baby, a new wife. And there's people dropping me comments on the videos from a couple of nights ago going like, no, understanding conspiracy has to be a flat earth because he's coming up with so much good stuff. He's not flat earth. He's totally a baller. He doesn't see there's any difference. So the Bible teaches flat earth. So what? The clowns may not be Nephilim, but doggone it, they're a big part of something. And they probably are. I mean, it's weird that the clown thing is there, but he doesn't have it figured out. He's in the mix. He's trying to make money. He doesn't know. He's not ready to commit. The Bible teaches flat earth. And I used to just sit there and be patient and go like, when he goes, why does Mudflood was Armageddon keep picking on me? Because you're trying to rise to the top like a Simon the magician of saying like, oh, I've got the key to get clicks. I'll just talk about the millennium ages past and all the flat.
Yeah, not that I'm in support of our education system, but you look at how long people with today's school, to be a doctor, you're looking at about 8 years of pretty dedicated as far as acquiring your education. It takes a while.
Right. To be an
And
intern, I mean, you got to be on 24-hour duty, 24 hours every 3 days.
Well, no, but I'm just saying this isn't any different. You to think that, well, whatever. I think it's a process that if you pursue it, it ought to happen, but it's not going to happen just in a few years, to go through the process.
Right. And I'm telling you, I'm worried. This type of talk of where it's all figured out, we can just blame those fake Jews and fake Israel and pretend they're real and act like they want to do a red heifer thing. And then it all comes down to, it wasn't the white people. Well, yes, it was. They used us to take over the world. And where did we come from? We were a small percentage of the population. And now all of the countries that were the League of Nations were the ones saying, help us to control our colonies. Listen, let's just listen to a couple of minutes and see where the world thinks the fault is right now.
Okay, guys, welcome to today's matinee. I really hope that isn't too annoying, but this is literally the only way I can do this. My last 2 stirks have been on this subject, so I'm going to continue with an abundance of caution. I'd really kind of rather give this a pass, but it's demented how much our history's been twisted. We've been taught our whole life that this is a land of human animals. Does that sound familiar? Like the strip right now? And I can show you 2 videos over on Rumble that will completely change your paradigm. I'll leave links to these in my community post because if I put it in the video, then I get messed with.
Right. And these people are the guys that are going to lead you towards Arianism. It was Hitler really that bad? Did he really not help the people? Were they afraid that if these white people were just left alone, they would rule the world? Yes, that's Static's position.
Benjamin Friedman's speech, where he explains who I'm going to call the Rhinelanders, had become an economic powerhouse that rivaled Britain's industrial and economic supremacy. And the whole goal of the Dub-Dubs was to eliminate the chance that they could ever become significant players on the world stage again. It was the same exact story with the U.S. Civil War and eliminating the South.
So the whole idea of rewriting history was so that it's obvious white people would rule the world if the world allowed them to. So the whole world wars was a way to keep white people from economic power, because they might come up with something like the petrodollar and take the world off the gold standard, silver standard, something that Abraham would have paid for a grave for his wife with. What, you want cows? You want silver? I got it. What do we pay with here? Well, the United States pays with petrodollars, and they want that to keep going. And it's not going to keep going because this isn't a restoration. This is a judgment. Anything, Randy, before I click go?
No, you covered it. I don't
He
need
also
to add.
explains how the unmentionables controlled all of the U.S. newspapers, still do, and how they all of a sudden started vilifying the Rhinelanders as modern-day barbaric Huns, even though a huge percentage of American families descended from the Rhineland. Just look at that little monster there.
Yeah, look at that little monster. And that is a thing. She doesn't look like a monster. She just looks like a normal person. 260 million white people in this country, the vast majority still, or the majority. But how did we get here? How did we get in charge? Those are the questions. Was it the normal evolution as they would have us believe? Where would static go right now, except that if you're this young lady's father, you better get 245s and an AR-15 gun up, because you're going to have to protect her against the people coming to kill her. And the people coming to kill her are the people that hate the world, because we could have saved the world if people would have let our economics grow, and we could just, the world would be a better place. That's what I'm getting.
It would take me 10 videos to straighten out the truth from what you've been told. I had already worked my way through a lot of the spider webs, but this video was an eye-opener.
Static has spent the last few years showing empty cities and saying, there's people moving here, you just can't see them because the photography was bad. We could have built those buildings, nothing's going on here. And now all of a sudden, when the Aryanism is striking and it is the world's view of things, it's everybody picking on the white people. And all we did was try to help. They don't understand our manifest destiny. We had the one drop rule. We had eugenics. So did Germany. And all of a sudden, we're so far apart. Yeah, Eisenhower had death camps. Eisenhower was hated by the John Birch Society. Somehow, Eisenhower chose Mao Zedong over Chiang Kai-shek. That threw a big monkey wrench in things at the end, and they had a big rewrite of World War II. But yeah, they were killing white people for no apparent reason. And then they chose Mao Zedong. That's the takeaway here.
Because just like the Cathars at the beginning of the video, they have completely flipped the script here. Now, yes, there were facilities that housed unmentionables. It started out as Reds that had fled Russia after red roaming the Tsar, his wife, his daughters, and literally collapsing the whole.
The Tsar, the Russian American company protected the United States from 1940s on, from Spain, from Louisiana. And then the United States turned on Russia at the end. That's more likely.
Whole kingdom. They fled south and started taking key positions to implement the same ideology. I'll also link my video on Rumble about that. I can't even show the thumbnail on here. But you've been told your whole life how the Rhineland was nothing but barbarians with no soul. And there's a certain number that you have been told your whole life about that event. Well, it turns out that's how many Rhinelanders were subtracted in camps, plus many more that had nothing to do with the dub-dub. They
So, Randy, are you ready to go with Static and say that the whole world wars, was to kill white people and hold them back? I'm not ready to go there. I don't think that.
No, I think that use discretion with anything, and there's at this point, why rush into anything? It's you need,
Exactly.
yeah, you need to view the same story from different perspectives before because I mean that's a biblical thing. The first comes in as a witness, and you hear but
Yeah.
you might want to hear another witness.
Yeah. Instead of the
Yeah.
same old.
1844, the people of the Rhineland were expiring, their cities in flames, their forces surrounded, outnumbered, and retreating on every front. And still, the conquering allies were afraid of them despite their overwhelming offensive strength. Winston Churchill was concerned the spirit of the Rhineland would rise again and they would attack the British Empire. American Roosevelt was concerned that Rhineland industrialists would rise again and conquer world markets. Like I said, it's all about the Benjamins. Churchill and Roosevelt met in Quebec City to decide what to do when it was all over. They discussed the plan to pastoralize the Rhineland. Pastoralize being a new word in good speak, which aims to control people by deceiving them. Pastoralization.
So they did, Mom Preston. Isn't it interesting? Are we seeing contrails and chemtrails from things that aren't jets? We
Oh, yeah.
are. We are. And so they did. They incinerated towns for no reason. Winston Churchill and Dwight D. Eisenhower, for no apparent reason, like they did Tokyo. Because how are you going to do a rewrite that all of the cities, were found in ruins unless all of the cities were found in ruins? And if, you have to bury them all in the common graves, you'll do it. Winston Churchill famously said, "No, I've never cooked a meal for myself, but I think I can make coffee because I've seen people do it." That's his life. There's your relative.
Yep. Correct.
And so there has to be a reason for all of the towns everywhere to be somewhat destroyed. So you bomb them. And then you take the prisoners, like in Obadiah, and turn them over to their enemies. You here's the captures. They're running from their enemies, and you turn them back over. The United States did everything wrong at the end of World War II. And then they rewrote history to where we weren't the racists, the Nazis were. We saved them. And then we brought them in to form our NASA. I mean, this 90% of the city destroyed. Well, the narrative has to be maintained. This Yalta conference, the big three, where's Chiang Kai-shek? Because this is February of 45, and they have a Yalta conference, but they leave out Chiang Kai-shek, and they, instead of the big four, there's no Mao Zedong, there's no Chiang Kai-shek. It's almost as if China was not invaded by Japan because, as they did it legally, wrote to the League of Nations, we're taking over this country and everything's legal. They had the Tehran conference again, big three, not the four. Potsdam, big three, not the big four. from July 17th to August 2nd, and the next day they dropped the first fake atomic weapon. Now FDR's gone, and the big three includes Truman. What's his claim to fame? I'll say I dropped the bomb and killed millions of people to save millions of lives, and history will go, give him hell, Harry. Give him hell. But the absence of what would become China, and China looking for revenge because Great Britain and the United States forced 2 opium wars on them, Boxer rebellions and everything else. And now they're in a position to say, we don't want your petrodollars anymore. And that's racist. They're holding the white man down, and we're not going to stand for it, Randy. Because this is a plan.
It could get ugly.
It's going to get ugly.
If you thought it was dog eat dog prior, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Nope. Who's running the world? Well, Stalin. Stalin at that time decided that we're the ones who lost more than every other country. We're the ones who ended up defeating Japan with this pincer move, the invasion of China, right when they claimed to be dropping fake atomic bombs. And then Japan surrendered, and the United States was given the credit of stopping them. And eventually, this Manchurian at the end of World War II, yes, that's a very busy thing, isn't it? And this was the only way to keep Japan from winning World War II. And that wasn't going to cut it because Japan was lied to. They weren't going to be considered white. Like Italy in 1943 was told, you're only non-Jewish, you're not white. This is recent history, Randy. There's nothing new. It always comes down to they're going to stir up the people to fight. Far-right grassroots movements, the Ku Klux Klan, the Communist Party, the John Birch Society. This is your history. This is what's going to lead up to them encompassing the last Christians of the world about, because they're going to try to make this work. And if we're going to still, give a rat's ass about this and think that that wasn't planned also, that Donald Trump's in on it like everybody else, then we will be judged and we will get what we deserve. And it will be a very narrow road. I showed last night how, just putting one person in place, Sarah T. Hughes, first judge appointed by Lyndon Johnson, the only woman to ever swear in a president. He called for her that day because she knew she'd come running, swear him in, nothing to see here, folks. And then also, she would be promoted to the Supreme Court, that when it came time for Goldwater, the conservative Jewish Republican, to vote for abortion, Sarah Hughes was the person that presided over the Roe v. Wade. Her multiple decisions included being the person to hear Roe v. Wade. And then when it passed, they had one Republican vote, and it was Barry Goldwater. And so abortion became legal. Thank you, Sarah Hughes. Thank you, Lyndon Johnson. Thank you, plan that was going to be unavoidable. And yet, here's what I consider a problem. Premillennialists, something I used to believe in, now think that the church, the local church believing in the Trinity, is the only beachhead for restoring society. That's the difference between preterism and premillennialism. We don't see a restoration of the world and then Jesus coming back to establish his millennium. The millennium is over. It was a judgment then, it's a judgment now. There is going to be no more restoring of this society. That ship has sailed. We're still dealing with people faking history and believing that, the Roman Catholics were a real church who did real good things and were just misunderstood because we don't understand how much we're supposed to love a trinity of gods. And they'll kill you if you say you don't love that trinity of gods. These people would have killed you in the most inhumane ways possible, drawing and quartering you, burning you alive at all. What do you think of that, Randy? We're dealing with
Yeah,
these.
yeah. So if you feel secure where you're at, you can thank your local mafia probably for that. But it still might only be temporary.
Right, and we see all the chevrons. Were these people really, I mean, accepted as like fellow Christians? They're burning people alive, but yeah, we're supposed to accept it. That
Or
kind of
even
looks,
embrace it. Yeah.
yeah. Doesn't Emperor Paul look like George Washington? So this guy, I guess he has some power. 81st Prince and Grand Master of something, the Knights of Malta. Somehow they've maintained their power. They don't seem to be worried about the way things are going in the world. They got a plan and they're sticking to it.
Well,
They've got a
good.
history that's rewritten and they're not afraid to say, hey, let's go on. And this whole tribute to the Falcon, I spent some time last night. There is a picture somewhere, Randy, of the Ronald Reagan giving a falcon to the Prince of Monaco. That's something that's supposed to happen every 100 years or something to keep a treaty going. And they did it in 1984 with Reagan and the Prince of Monaco. Something weird going on there.
Yeah, with their symbolism. Yeah, I suppose.
So thank everybody, over a dozen people checking in right now as I check in with Randy, because Randy, I mean, this whole thing is the Prince of Tyre, it was an economic thing. I don't know what was going on in heaven. I know that the reason Jesus came was to deal with sin in heaven. We're on to something. We're figuring it out. The main message is people do not gun up and think I own this land and I'm going to serve God by protecting my family with these weapons. You will die. You will be killed. I do not care if you hold them off for 5 or 6 attacks when they've got to get your last 3 months of food. They're going to get your last 3 months of food because there's no other food around. And then they're going to rape your wife and kill your children. Because you're not listening to God of saying that this is unavoidable. This is going to be a judgment, not a restoration of the world. Those days are over. It's scary, Randy, and people don't want to hear it.
Yeah, when it comes to hopscotch and between the distractions, I know there's a few eyes focused on Texas right now with the convoy that they have organized and with the border nonsense, chaos slash, idiocy. Yeah.
We can't deny it. They're sending people from China here. They're sending people from other countries here that do not have white America's best interest at heart. I get it. You never owned any slaves, you white people. But we all took advantage of, they couldn't vote and couldn't get loans until 1964. And then they were policed harshly. I'm dealing in a school here in Colorado that, they want to talk about free speech for students and everything else, but it's a dry campus. It's no marijuana, and yet in Madison, Wisconsin in the 70s, they legalized marijuana, and nobody can be busted for marijuana since the 1970s going to the University of Wisconsin. But not nowadays. Nowadays, it's still like, ooh, we don't know.
Yeah,
Really,
they had a
you don't know.
progressive mayor.
Right, and you can blame him, but it really didn't bring down Wisconsin. It really didn't. And there's,
Paul Sogman, I think, was his name.
It didn't diminish the University of Wisconsin standing in the Big Ten as like, boy, whoa, you got a degree from there, you're stupid. No, it's a pretty good school. But
yeah, they
different
know how to
rules.
party there. I mean, they were notorious for that, and who can suck more beer and brandy than Wisconsin?
And that's the way they want it. That's the way they wanted it to be. And that's the way they got it.
Seems like, yeah. Traditions.
We still can't vote. Does any vote count? Of course, no, your vote doesn't count. It didn't matter in 1960 when they say Kennedy stole the election. It didn't matter when Trump stole the election and didn't win, or Biden. I mean, so wow.
All
Biden
they want is your money. Your vote, that's irrelevant, but they want your money.
Yeah. They want you on their team. So with that, I think Randy, I don't know. We've got to find out where we're going to go.
Coming up on 75-minute here.
And really basically what we're saying is white people, the rest of the world hates you. Why? We know you didn't own any slaves, but somehow what the United States did to get where we are, to be the ones that says, we got the petrodollar, we control everything. And now to be surprised that the rest of the world is going, why do we have to pay in petrodollars? Someone from the United States needs to say, yeah, that seems weird. That seems really weird that they're paying in petrodollars and the white countries of the world are ruling it and they don't want to be colonized anymore. Gosh, what are we going to do? Look, there's fentanyl on every street corner in America. There's meth on every street corner in America. You are under attack. They can't fill the quotas of people that aren't too fat to join the military. They're having to loosen the standards. And yet, buy another Colt 45 automatic and you'll be fine. Just get a go bag, 3 months worth of food, and you'll have nothing to worry about. I'm telling you, people, you got a lot to worry about. Randy, do you think people should worry?
Well, I don't know what their state of mind, but I'm not worried. I'm not going to worry. That's beyond my pay scale, is what.
Right.
Not that I don't care. I'm not saying I don't care, but as far as worrying, I'll leave that in my Lord's hands for
and
that.
We know that the end from the beginning, there's a narrow road that's saved. And we do know, and Arturo's one of the, go Trump. He says he's going to take the men out of the girls' bathroom.
We'll see.
A lot of people say a lot of things. And when you put your hope in man, you will be disappointed. Because as an 80-year-old individual, I don't think that he's that much better than Biden. I just think that he's a symbol of They can hope that he does what he says, but is he really? I mean, he's the Operation Warp Speed guy. He's the one that made sure everybody could be jabbed safely. And now maybe, maybe not. So we've got that going. We're going to be back on it. We have so much more that is upcoming that you need to stay with the facts. The Mudflood was Armageddon. This is a flat earth nation. We don't need understanding conspiracy to jump into the mix and say it doesn't matter. It super matters. Any closing thoughts, Randy?
Yeah, there's a number of things, yeah, to keep your eyes on, particularly the Lord and your Savior, and then everything else trails behind that, you know, beginning with probably family and other close associates. But yeah, these are interesting times. It's life is good.
Life is something where every day is a chance to praise the Lord. We live in the midst of rewritten history, yet God is in control. So we know the end from the beginning. We know there will be people saved from wrath on this flat earth. It is a flat earth. The golden age is past. The mud flood was Armageddon. We're never going to tell you anything else because we are called and we have your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Thank you, Randy.